This is it, the episode everybody is waiting to see, 2025 predictions from Fox Marin. So what we're going to do today is we're going to interview our top buyer agents, and we're going to hear their predictions as to where they see the market going. And this is going to be real and unfiltered. My name is Ralph Fox, and I am the co-founder and broker of record at Fox Marin. And today we have joining us the fabulous, the incredible, my partner in life and in business, Corey Marin, co-founder and broker at Fox Marin, here to get into a deep dive of 2025 predictions, what to expect in the upcoming new year. Let's hit it. Okay, so here we have back again 2 weeks in a row, Jessica Spillas, broker extraordinaire, and as previously described, the queen of acquisitions of all of North America. We're so happy to have you here, Jess, to talk about none other than 2025. I mean, what could be more exciting than 2025 real estate predictions? You're on YouTube or Spotify right now.
Love it. Thank you so much for having me. I'm always very humbled when I come on this podcast.
It's very humbling for all of us, actually.
I need a refresher as to how your nickname, the Queen of Acquisitions, came to be. Did we write it in an Instagram post once, and then it just became a thing?
You know what? I actually think the inception of Queen of Acquisitions started on an early podcast.
I think it came from Corey, though.
I think it came from me somehow. I don't think, Ralph, that would be something you would...
No,
because
that's Corey.
Our early podcast intros included a lot of descriptive words like effervescent and... and I think that's where it started.
I mean, that effervescent anymore. Should I be worried?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. All right, well, let's hop to it. Ralph, why don't you kick off our 2025 predictions?
Ooh, well, this is an exciting topic. Okay, so going into 2025, Jess, what type of conversations are you having with your client? What is the sentiment? What is the expectation? What is the mood like? You know, as we talked about on our last conversation with you on the real estate podcast, Toronto Real Estate Podcast, you know, we were talking about uncertainty. Have you seen a shift? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? Talk to us.
So when it comes to the types of conversations I'm having with clients right now, it really depends on what side they are on of the transaction. I'll start with buyers. Going into 2025, there is still a lot of trepidation. Buyers still have their backs up against the wall. There's no sense of urgency. And so even though there's a lot of great opportunities out there for them, nobody really wants to jump on it. And the conversations that I'm having with buyers is that you don't know if you've reached the bottom of the market until things are on its way up. And so if you see a good opportunity in front of you, you owe it to yourself to jump in with both feet. And the best way that you can immunize yourself from losses is to think long term. A lot of clients will end up going into analysis paralysis because they have more of a day trader mentality. And I think that when you do that, it is impossible to capitalize on good opportunities because you get into your own head. And hindsight is 20/20. And so what I tell everyone on the buy side is that, yeah, things might come down another 1 or 2%, which is what we're seeing in the numbers these days. But is it really going to matter if you hang on to that condo or freehold home for 10 years and you earned hundreds of thousands of dollars in appreciation? No. So I think as long as you think long term, you will end up in the winner's circle because just if you look at the basic supply and demand factors in the city, I think it's pretty clear where things are headed.
100%. And there's also the other aspect to it. One is trying to time the market from a financial standpoint while thinking long term, which is something we always advocate. But the other is like thinking about your personal circumstances and also thinking about the timing of that, you know, and reminding people that, you know, school years and jobs and adding additions to family and, you know, a huge part of the equation really also needs to become are you timing it right for your family and for your personal needs, knowing where the market is going long term and not, as you said, getting caught up in analysis paralysis?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a tough thing for most people to do right now because the rhetoric is it's a buyer's market, buyers can ask for the world. And it's interesting because when you look at the absorption rate, it tells us that we are in fact not in a buyer's market. We're flip-flopping somewhere between the more extreme end of a balanced market or top end of a seller's market. And when you compare that to recent years, it might feel like we're in a buyer's market, but based on the data, there is still a limit to how much leverage a purchaser has. And when you look at the statistics, in most asset classes, they've barely moved, and in some instances, they've actually continued to appreciate year over year. So I think once you understand that, you'll realize that waiting is based on speculation, and if you're making decisions based on speculation, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Great advice. And are there any areas of the city or communities or neighborhoods that you feel will outperform other areas that are sort of hidden gems that people should be exploring, especially if they're in a more entry to middle level price point?
Yeah. When I look at potential for growth, especially those with shorter term goals, I've always been a proponent of looking for those underdog neighborhoods because some of the more desirable neighborhoods and communities in Toronto have already hit its peak. And so even though they'll continue to appreciate, I think the rate in which they appreciate might not be as attractive as something that is still continuing to grow. And one of the areas that I have my eye on now personally is the upper west sides of Toronto. So areas like the Junction, Bloor West Village, Corso Italia. These areas in particular still offer reasonable levels of affordability, and the homes are still of decent quality. And these are very walkable, connected, high-density neighborhoods that have a community feel to them. And I think that's something that buyers are always going to gravitate toward. And, think of it this way. They're not building any more single-family homes in Toronto. And if you want to stay downtown and raise a family, at a certain point, you are going to need more space. And so that area where most people are going to flock toward is just going to continue to expand outward and outward. And those western areas, northwestern areas, just being outside of the core, it makes a lot of sense to me that those are going to be the next to sort of explode.
Totally agree. And we just did our top 3 neighborhood predictions, our last podcast. And we did select 2 neighborhoods in that sort of upper west section of the city, just there in like your Caledonias, your Weston, your Rockcliffe Smythe. And like what I love about those areas is that they're like really blue collar, they're really safe, they've got community vibes, the neighbors say hello to you, somebody is going to offer, not pretentious, and still totally livable and walkable, which is why people want to live in the city. People don't want to be commuting when they live in the city. The whole purpose of living in the city is that you want to walk out your front door and be able to get a coffee or go to your local fruit stand or walk your dog and meet somebody at a dog park or whatever it is. So I'm totally on the same page with that area. Very, very underrated. So I love that. Well,
Okay. So let's get down to brass tacks. This is the question everyone has been waiting for. I'm even waiting to hear your answer, Jess. Give us your predictions for the overall market performance in 2025, where we will be a year from now on average and up or down, and where you see the subcategories ending up or down.
Okay, so I'll start with freehold homes. Based on the early activity that I'm seeing in the market right now, it seems like we are going to be in for a busy spring market. I think when affordability takes a bit of a pause, and as we mentioned last week, the market is mirroring some of the numbers and statistics that we saw in 2021, which has given buyers a real runway to enter into the market. And so most buyers right now are chasing those upper echelon properties, such as detached homes, semi-detached homes, which is why we're already seeing them appreciate year over year. So I think that's going to continue and sort of ramp up in terms of its competitiveness. because the fact of the matter is it's very likely that in the next 5 to 10 years, the average individual coming out of university with student debt, they're either going to own a home or they're not, period. So I think people are starting to understand that that window of opportunity is closing and is trying to get in there now, knowing that that lower hanging fruit such as condos might still be available in terms of opportunity a little bit longer. So on the flip side, I think that condos, knowing that there's over 7 months of inventory right now, still have a very long way to go. And so I don't see condos declining rapidly in 2025, but I do predict that they will stay relatively stagnant to where they are now. Like I said, with all of the inventory that's on the market at present, especially in the one bedroom category, and you think about the erosion of the investor pool, and you think about most first-time home buyers being basically diminished as well, just based on the level of affordability. Those types of properties are really struggling. And even if they do start to gain momentum, I think it's going to take us a while until we start seeing those sellers market absorption rates. So my prediction is that freehold homes are going to continue to be the leader in appreciation. I can see them growing as much as 10% year over year. And I think condos will stay relatively stagnant. Maybe some months they'll go up by 2%. Maybe some months they'll go down by 1%. But on average, I think they'll flatline.
Overall, you see a bit of an uptrend in the market when amortized. You see a crash?
No, I definitely don't see a crash. I mean, anyone who understands the level of supply that we need in Toronto relative to the rate of growth and demand that we have at present, it's very clear to see that that won't happen. You need to have a inordinate amount of supply in order for a crash to occur. And I think the thing that people realize even less is that not only do we have a supply problem, and I say this all the time, we have a quality supply problem here. And so that means that if a great opportunity comes on the market that functions well, has a good layout, natural light, nice finishes, is relatively turnkey, those are always going to be really hot commodities. And again, they're not building any more single family homes. So there's a bit of a scarcity mentality there, and I think that needs to be understood because at the end of the day, everybody needs somewhere to live. We're not selling shoes here.
No, we're not.
Sometimes I wish we were. It'd be so much easier. What do you need? A size 8 or you might be a size 9. Like, grab the box. Voila, you're done.
Yes.
See you later. No problem solving required.
Yeah.
I have one last question for you before we sign off on 2025 predictions. Have like a wild card prediction, something that's plausible that might be a little out there for 2025 that somebody might not expect about next year?
Yeah. My wild card prediction is that the rental market is going to explode and that rental prices
That's
are going
wild
to
card.
jump up exponentially. And the reason why I think that's a real possibility is you think about all of the investors who have actually exited the market, especially the sort of more mom and pop type of investors, people that don't have an entire portfolio of properties, where affordability has become a growing issue for them, not to mention heavy taxation, foreign buyer bans, and the Landlord and Tenant Act essentially being mostly in favor of the tenant. So if something goes wrong with the landlord, they have very little recourse. And so they're being discouraged from being a landlord and an investor. And so not only are you seeing current investors exit out the market, but you're discouraging new ones from entering. And so when that happens, you're directly affecting supply, and there's no incentive to upkeep the existing supply. And so as affordability becomes an issue, and if freehold prices do in fact climb, it might price people entirely out of the market and they might have no choice but to rent. And so when you have a growing rental population and very little quality of inventory, what do you think is going to happen?
It's interesting. I think the challenge short term to that theory will be the record amount of condos still in the pipeline. So there is a lot that's still coming for the next year or two. And then it's literally like a ball falling off a table. So I do foresee that happening. I think you're 100% right. And I think that and we've been talking about this forever, is that the freehold market is going to lead the condo market. And the freehold market probably, based on your numbers, but I do agree, like it's going to be out of reach really soon, really quick. And all that's going to be left for anyone who wants to own are condos. There'll be a lot of supply, so I think it'll take a while to play itself out. But I totally agree with you. Like the whole political system and government policy is basically designed to attack evil investors, which great for media sound bites, not so good for long-term supply, knowing that capital, at least in Canada for the time being, is still somewhat fluid.
Yeah, and I also think that there will be people in pursuit of a freehold home that if affordability becomes an issue, they're not just going to default to the lower hanging fruit. They're not going to default to a condo. They'll rent for a year or two so that they can save up a little bit more to get into those freehold markets. So I think that will in turn put further pressure on demand.
Or they'll just do this and say, Dad, we need Mom, we need another 50 grand. Done.
Though, across the board, though, in terms of like investor podcasts and real estate podcasts and YouTube, you do see a lot of people saying that they're going to opt to rent for the next little while over purchase. I do see that, they just want to save their capital and keep it close to their chest. Not that renting is the way to do that, because you're just paying off somebody else's mortgage.
Yes, but somebody who doesn't think long term can be very enticed with the idea of renting versus owning. I mean, I've had some clients that were in the market and chose to rent out their own place and then rent out another property because they just grew so fatigued with being a property owner and having to fix everything and being susceptible to interest rate hikes. And so there's a small pool of individuals that like the hassle-freeness of being a tenant and not having to worry about unexpected costs. Now, mind you, long-term, it's going to be very difficult to climb out of that hole, but I do understand the appeal from a short-term perspective. And I think a lot of people are starting to look at that now, because to live in the identical property, to own it, is going to cost you a lot more than renting that identical suite.
But when you go through the principles of leverage, when you're only putting 20% down and tax-free benefits and the advantages of paying down your own mortgage versus somebody else, very quickly when things turn, it becomes very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's the discussion that we always have about making money versus generating wealth. And I think a lot of people find it difficult to grasp that particular theory. And so
I think it was the perfect answer, because we're tossing out a wild card. It was a wild.
You did ask for a wild card, yes.
Question, and I like it. I like the ballsiness of it. I always respect that. Thank you so much for your insights into 2025. I know we don't have a crystal ball, but we're super pumped. And I don't mean to use this term that was way overused somewhere else, but we're ready to turn the page. We are ready to turn the page. 2025. So we'll have to reflect back on this podcast next year just to see where everything plays out. But
hopefully this ages well.
Great.
Like fine wine.
Yes.
Thanks just so much for joining us.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
As we stand on the precipice of 2025, who better than to have the suave, the powerful Reuben Labovitz, broker at Fox Marin, here to share his insights of where he sees things going this upcoming year. Rueben, so great to have you here as always.
Thank you for having me. And I think 2025 might be the year where you learn how to pronounce my last name correctly.
And how do you do that? Just for the record.
Labovitz.
That's right.
Let us say it properly.
No. So
Like
new year, new shot.
I thought of another way to pronounce it, but we don't have to go there right now. Okay, so Ruben, going into 2025, let's talk because that's what we do for a living. We talk, we communicate. In our past conversation, talking about 2024, you talked about how you were seeing a real surge of activity in the month of December. Can you give us some insights into the types of conversations you're having with clients right now? And have you seen any type of shift in sentiment or outlook going into the new year? What are you seeing? What are you feeling?
Yeah. So going into the new year right now, the vast majority of the clients that I'm working with are buyer clients. And so most of the conversations that I'm having are from that lens. And again, just slightly different from condo buyers versus freehold buyers. And on the condo side, there seems to be widespread belief that now is a good time to buy. There is a lot of condo inventory, rates are coming down, and so people have the ability not only to capitalize on lower payments, but also on lesser competition. And just anecdotally, in the last week, I've had 3 separate conversations with brand new condo buyers, all looking to purchase a 1-bedroom condo in downtown Toronto at the beginning of the new year. And we weren't having any of those conversations for a long time. So I'll say very positive from a buying perspective of condos leading up until the new year. On the freehold side, the sentiment is a little bit different from a buyer's perspective, and there seems to be more concern and I guess wondering if it is attainable anymore. And I think not only will the lower interest rates contribute in prices being driven up, now, as of 2 days ago, there's a whole new group of buyers who have the ability to purchase properties between $1 million and $1.5 million with less than 20% down. And sure, at first glance, maybe that seems like a really good idea because it brings that property type to people who might not have been able to afford it previously. But really all it's doing is adding fuel to the fire and creating more demand on a product that already has incredibly limited supply.
Yeah,
So interesting.
Popular category to begin with, and entry-level freehold market is that price range.
It's so interesting how our now resigned finance and deputy prime minister somehow in her statement about this new policy initiative was talking about how this would increase supply, which I just found absolutely fascinating. But obviously she is no longer. So
well, a position's open, Ralph, if you want another thing going on for you.
Yeah, I got spare time. I don't think I'd make it through the vetting.
You would be an amazing politician, Ralph. It's just the bureaucracy would just crush you.
My soul.
It would. It would.
And my past history at Western. That's a whole other life, though.
You're like, I can relate to Hexit.
Yeah. Drop it.
I'm just kidding. Kidding. Retracted media retraction right there. So questions. So Rubes, let's get into some predictions. You're really good with numbers. You're very analytical. Tell me what you think your forecast is going to be. Let's use your word in a divided market. Let's talk about your forecast for 2025 for the condo segment. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about your forecast for the freehold market. And I'd love to hear some percentages, appreciation.
Okay, so I'm going to start with freehold. And I just think for everything that we just discussed, specifically that entry-level freehold, but of course that will trickle on up, I'm going to say we're going to see double-digit increases from year over year, I guess we should say. I just think that the demand is there, and I think with rates coming down, prices are going to go up considerably, and months of inventory are going to come down and shrink. Yep. And the reason why I wanted to start with freehold is because I'm actually going to divide the condo market in two. And I think that larger, more livable 2 and 3 bedroom condos are going to perform well. Maybe we won't see the same level of increases. I would be shocked if we saw the same level of increases but I do still think that that will be the first to increase in the condo market. Whereas one bedrooms and studios, the smaller guys, maybe the more investor driven units, I think are going to lag behind for now. It's not going to be forever. But at least in 2025, I think that's where there are going to be differences in the condo market.
And overall, what would your prediction for the condo market be, knowing that they make up a large segment of the market?
I think that the larger units are going to keep prices relatively flat. I would not be surprised if the smaller ones still dropped a little bit. But so I think year over year, my prediction for the condo market is that it's going to be flat. And that's because of the juxtaposition of the two different, the two different subsections that I've just discussed.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be choppy.
Yeah.
It'll be like plus or minus a couple points every month. But I think over time, it's going to slowly grind up.
Agreed.
The median appreciation will be flat because the larger units will drag up the average, but then the small will drag it back down. That makes sense.
Exactly.
I have to align with that. What do you think about the condo townhouse?
I think it really depends. There are some condo townhomes that are fantastic, and there are others that are just built so shittily.
Italy. That could be the word for 2025.
2025, shittily.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not in hindsight.
But there's so much fluctuation. I think condo townhomes are a tremendous asset type because it gives that middle ground from condo buyers to freehold buyers and that's one of the reasons why I think the larger condos are going to perform well. We just don't have enough quality condo townhomes in the city that I think that I can really make a informed prediction on that.
I so agree with you. It's such an untapped asset. And we were talking about this with one of our teammates yesterday, just about the condo townhouse. And we're like, why are they so shittily built? And some of them feel like they are like subsidized housing and like just bad infills. And you're just
some of them feel like you could feel your neighbor through the wall.
You totally could feel your neighbor.
But when done right.
Yeah, when done right, absolutely.
And there's some great older ones that just with the little cosmetic updates, new kitchen, some of them will have fireplaces in them. There's some great ones.
Terraces, square footage.
Yeah.
There are some really quality, I don't know the developer, but there are some really quality newer ones just around the corner from me on Perth that are really, really quality. And actually better than they're quite nice, but they're few and far between.
Yeah, I totally agree on that as well. Interesting. Okay. Ralph?
So Ruben, I'm going to throw a little wild card question at you because I think you had such a great word for 2024. In terms of a prediction, what do you think this time next year your word for 2025 will be, just based on where you see the market heading?
And shitty is not an option.
Shittily.
Sorry. Is not an option.
Not a word. I think it'll be a better environment for sure.
Yeah. I would say the opposite of fiddly. I think it's actually going to be much more optimistic in 2025 than it was in 2024.
Me too. It has no other way to go. I feel like we kind of hit like that just rock bottom negativity.
I cannot say this enough, but I feel a change in government and a change in vibes would be so helpful. And maybe just getting off the backs of Canadians from a tax perspective would be really, really, really helpful. I think it's all in the cards.
Like sooner than you think, even maybe with everything that's happened over the last 24 hours.
Perhaps, but I think we really need that here.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But I do feel optimistic about 2025. Again, I think great word. I think you nailed it there.
Yeah, I'm into Reuben's word.
Thank you.
So Rubes, in terms of neighborhoods with like potential upside, any neighborhoods that people graduating from their first condo to their first house should be exploring, or somebody who's skipping right into their first freehold, like an untapped area of the city? Do you have your pulse on anything specific there?
So When you asked me this last year, I think the answers that I gave were Caledonia, Fairbanks, and Bloordale. And I think I'm actually just going to, I don't want to just say those two neighborhoods because I do still believe that both have so much untapped potential.
Agree.
I'm going to say anywhere in the city, let's say south of Edmonton, where you can today buy a freehold property for under $1.3 million. Because I do not think that anybody will be able to do that for much longer. And I think it's very possible by the end of 2025 that those opportunities in accessible locations, sure, maybe might not be super developed just yet, but that are adjacent to the more desirable traditional Riverdales, Leslievilles, Beaches, Roncesvalles, High Park, the Annex, anything that is, they're just growing out. And so anything that's adjacent to that is still on transit, where you can buy a good, solid, it doesn't have to be 100% move-in ready, but freehold property under $1.3 million, I think will do very well and likely outperform the market.
I think that's really good advice. And I agree that if you can get yourself tucked into one of these neighborhoods, the community and the densification and the gentrification will build around these areas that are populated. And Ralph and I have talked about this on former podcasts before, but as the city just becomes so much busier and traffic becomes so much more condensed, that we're all going to become again and renew this sense of like smaller communities within the community where in your own neighborhood, you can walk to your local butcher, and then you can go to your local coffee shop and your grocer and your fruit market, so that we're not all getting into our cars to drive to like the stockyards, for example, to pick up supplies for whatever we need at the Home Depot. And so I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see that revitalization of community. And I love that idea, because the reason that we all live in the city is because we want to be able to walk from to and fro things and not have to like get into a car every time you're meeting friends for dinner across the city, as an example. So I think it's good advice. I like it. Ralph, do you want to add anything to Reuben's prediction?
No, I think it was poignant. So Reuben Labovitz, we're going to wrap this up. I just want to ask you one question, exciting one.
Yes.
What would your wild card out there in 2025 be? Not going to hold you to it, but if like something outside the box, what would you think that would be?
So I think this is a wild card prediction, and I think that I don't even know if it's possible. My wild card for 2025 is the end of the foreign buyer ban in Canada.
Oh,
Interesting.
I've thought about that foreign buyer ban. Like, why? It's ridiculous.
Oh, I know, slightly controversial way to end here, but I think that that's my wild card for next year.
I think that's a good one.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to see how your predictions fare as 2025 unfolds. But
Optimistic 2025.
for now, let's just run with optimistic. Okay, so we are now talking 2025, and we have Sammy Marasco back-to-back appearances on the Toronto Real Estate Podcast, here talking all things predictions for the year that lies ahead. Sammy, so great to have you here.
Awesome to be here, Ralph.
Awesome. Well, we want to hear all about your thoughts on 2025. So going into the new year, what types of conversations are you having with your clients? And what does the energy look like from the conversations and the people within your database that are looking to do something next year? What does it look like right now? What is this? Tell us all about the sentiment.
Good question. So I think top convo I'm having is regarding when's the best time to list my condo. And this has been going on since I think the summer. But based on our conversations and client-specific situations, many of these people have decided it's in their best interest to wait. So I've been updating them monthly, watching sales stats, days on market, inventory levels in their specific neighborhoods, and even in their specific buildings. And this is giving these clients a better understanding of what direction trends are moving. so we can be prepared to list during better conditions. So sentiment here is tentative, but calm and ready for battle, if you will.
And what about on the buy side?
On the buy side, yeah, that's another convo I'm having. So strategies surrounding purchasing freeholds. Convos are regarding the sense of urgency for anyone buying in between the $1 million and $1.5 million range. And this is due in part to those new mortgage rules we're hearing about that went into effect yesterday. And we do get excited for a rate decrease, but that could inevitably mean higher prices and more competition than we saw last year. So where we had the advantage of adding conditions and taking our time last year, that will cease to exist with more buyers in the market. So this year, our strategies will need to be tighter and more aggressive. And I think the sentiment here is there's more energy and they're eager, also ready for battle.
Okay.
Always be ready for battle.
Always ready for battle.
Way.
Well, what a great position to be represented by the warrior princess herself. Yeah, saying that because I've seen you on the pickleball court. So not just conjecture.
When Sammy was my partner playing pickleball, she basically just like won for our side. Like, I don't think I even touched the ball, but our side kept winning. And we're like, yeah, we're the champions. I'm like, well, pretty sure Sammy did all of that. So I can attest.
Well,
to
teamwork.
I love it. I love it. So speaking of buyers, what areas do you think, or could you project or forecast, are going to have tremendous value and might outperform other areas in Toronto next year?
I think condo townhomes, just looking at the data over this past year, average price of a condo townhome is around $770,000, and there's almost 5 months of inventory in that segment. So favorable for buyers, and they can provide options for more storage and more space in condos, more separation. They generally have lower maintenance fees than condos, but less financial responsibilities than freeholds. So currently, I think this class is showing its value, and it's a good time to jump.
I love the condo townhouse. I think Toronto could do a better job with some of the condo townhouse infills, where sometimes you're like, is this subsidized housing or is this a condo townhouse? I'm not really sure of the difference depending on the area. However, there are some tremendous pockets with really adorable offerings. They give you a sense of community. You feel very safe because your neighbors are right there. So you live alone or you have a partner that travels a lot and you still want the feeling of a house, but you don't want to feel like completely isolated or scared at night or whatever it might be. I just think it's an amazing option. Also, if you have a pet and you want to have a large dog and you want to have your own private entrance, you can get in and out so effortlessly. And a lot of them have amazing outdoor terraces with barbecue hookup, for example, and a lot of ways to add value over time. And some of them are a little bit more dated. So a really great option to refresh and make it a little bit more contemporary. I think it's a really, really good, smart answer. I like it. I like it a lot.
Okay, so we're not pussyfooting around anymore. Here is the big question. Overall, what is your prediction for the 2025? Hard to even say it, think it, let alone believe it, because it's just around the corner. But what is your predictions for the market?
I think for the market overall, with interest rates on the decline, I think prices across all segments will rise. I think depending on the segment you're in, whether it's detached, semis, condos, that will determine the velocity or the amount at which it will rise. For example, I think detached and luxury markets, they had their moment to shine this year. They had a bit of a rise. Whereas semi-detached, it will continue to do well because most of the semis that we see are within that $1 million to $1.5 million price bracket. And then condos. Condos prices are lower and we've got more inventory. We still have 4.7 months of inventory. So I think condos will shine as well.
Okay, so let's talk numbers now. A year from now, at the end of 2025, how much are you anticipating the market will have gone up? Are you saying modest percentage rise? Like what would you say percentage-wise higher than it is today?
Percentage-wise, I would say 3.5%.
Okay. So well below the average of the last 30, 40 years, but still a slight increase,
Yes.
a modest
Yes,
increase.
I worry about these the bigger economic factors like unemployment, high cost of living, that sort of thing. I don't think a GST, HST break will really help everyone.
You don't think we're in a vibe session, Sammy?
No,
Oh,
I don't
your
think that's
vibes.
you.
Your vibes.
Live session has left the building.
Oh, the whole thing has to leave the building and just never come back.
I don't think it will make a difference either. I think that's a really smart prediction, Sammy. Like something just really, plausible, soft, modest, hovering under 5%.
And what sector do you think will lead it based on what you're saying, that 1 to 1.4 range, semi-detached row houses kind of thing? Yeah.
Semi-detached for sure.
That will outperform. Okay.
And then if you could pick one crazy ass wild card prediction for 2025, something unexpected but plausible, what would that be?
I think, and I don't know that this will be a huge shift, but I think we're going to see a bigger shift toward either co-ownership or multifamily living, where people are just going to say, you know what, I'll let my mother-in-law live with me. Or my mother, if it's going to make things more affordable. I guess that missing middle, if you call it. And it's plausible because we have this affordability crisis. People are having financing issues. People are losing their jobs. Baby boomers are getting older and need to be closer to family. So yeah, I think it's definitely possible. And I've even spoken to my friends, like to have the Costa Rican casita situation where you've got like 2 or 3, self-contained units, whether it's vertically or horizontally with a pool and a main house, like that would be so epic. That would be perfect. Just a matter of all of us figuring out one spot to live in this giant city. That's the challenge for us. But splitting costs between a gardener or a housekeeper, someone who can mind the children, that would be like commune style. I think that would be really fun.
Have you ever tried to organize 6 people to go out for dinner?
Yeah,
On a
it's like
specific
next to
day?
impossible.
Yeah. Try doing that on a $2.5 million purchase. Good luck.
Yeah, well, I can dream, right?
I like the idea. It just depends on who the players are.
Well, if I had a Nona, I'd live with her. She'd be really cute. Do my laundry and make me pasta. Maybe there's like an adopt a Nona thing.
Let's do you and Nona for Christmas, Ralph.
Yeah.
This is the perfect idea.
I think so. Okay, well, Sammy, one last question that we can leave this off on. If you could give your clients and potential clients and our viewers out there who are watching this, one piece of advice to prepare for 2025, what would you tell them? From a real estate perspective.
From a real estate perspective, of course. Get yourself a knowledgeable real estate professional, and everything will fall into place from there. You definitely need someone who has proven processes and experience and can help you stay educated and 1 step ahead or 3 steps ahead so you can make an informed decision. And someone who will give it to you straight, not sugarcoat it, and who has a team of, lawyers, brokers, lenders, trusted professionals in the business that can get creative and really help you shine in a tough market.
Amazing advice. Do you know anyone who fits that description?
Yeah, maybe one team.
Perfect.
You had a British accent there for a second, Ralph. You're like,
I thought I went Irish. I thought we were back in Ireland.
well, Sandy, it's great having you on the pod. Thank you for all your amazing ideas for 2025. We look forward to seeing how everything plays out, and it's not that far away.
No, it's not.
All right. Thanks, Sammy. Catch you in the next one.
We have Mr. Ian Busher, VP Sales of Fox Marin, here to talk about the topic we are all waiting to hear about, 2025 real estate predictions Ian, so great to have you here joining us.
Thanks for having me, Ralph.
Awesome. All right. Well, we have a whole bunch of questions to ask you. Let's talk about conversations.
Sure.
What are you noticing, if anything, with the conversations and sentiment that you're having with your clients going into 2025 that may be different from the conversations you're having this year? Are you seeing any change of sentiment, momentum, plus or minus right now, both on the buy and the sell side?
Thanks for asking. Great question. I don't think so. Not yet in terms of, I'm saying I don't think so in terms of a massive shift. Just as the clock turns over, I think we're going to be in for a bit of the same. I think we're so in the trenches with things. Change is going to be a little bit slow for 2025. I'm telling people it's still unpredictable out there for both buyers and sellers. Pricing is a real challenge, both for buying and selling. Unpredictable. Market sentiment is mixed, and we try really, really hard to predict what the results might be for buyers and sellers. Properties we're looking at, properties we're listing, but it's been the hardest time in many years to maintain our high percentage of accuracy, because for one reason or another, one listing will blow up and another will fall flat, and that's for both buyers and sellers. So you're trying to help someone, advise someone, bring comparable sales, bring market analysis to a buyer to say, I think this will sell for X amount, and I think a decent offer would be X. And then finding out that final number is way off from where you are. And the same is true for sellers, trying to figure out what someone would be willing to pay for a property. Can we get a bidding war going for this? Or is it best to come out with a price? It's harder than it's ever been. And I think we are really good at that, but it's the most challenging time for picking out a property's value. Hardest that I can ever remember.
Yep. Could not agree more. So what are you looking forward to in terms of a fresh new year?
And for those of you who saw our previous podcast with Ian and myself talking about 2024 being the year of muck.
Such a great word.
Are you projecting more muck, or do you think are you maybe drier conditions?
Oh God, I hope so. I certainly hope it's drier conditions, as I'm sure all three of us do, right? As I said in the first answer, I think the growth will be slow, but the growth will be there. I'm really having a tough time with my predictions for the last 18 months or so. Ralph, you mentioned talking about 2024, and of course we can't talk about 25 without talking about 2024. But saying that we kept looking for those rays of sunshine to peek through and dry out the muck and maybe make things a bit easier. We could stand on solid ground, but they just, every single one of them it just didn't materialize, is what I'm looking for. So I'm cautiously optimistic that in 2025 we can start to get a foothold, and some of those rays of sunshine will come out and the muck will be less, and the success stories will be more, and we'll start to get a bit of momentum. That's what would be nice for 2025. Momentum.
Okay.
Oh,
So
yes.
So speaking about momentum
Mm-hmm.
and getting out of the muck, what are your overall predictions for the market? And then how do you see the subcategories? Where do you see leading and where do you see trailing right now, plus or minus?
Still bullish on Toronto real estate. I still think there's going to be a rebound. I'm just, the question is when. Generally, I think slow growth overall for 2025, but slower for condos. There's a lot of healing that has to be done in the condo segment. So I think 2025, hopefully we'll start to see our inventory get reduced on the condo sector, so that again, I'm going to keep using that word, momentum, starts to develop momentum, and maybe the rebound for that comes 2026, 2027. But I think it's going to be slower. And I think Freehold is going to continue to build on the success it's starting to see, but generally slow growth for all segments over 2025.
So overall, what's your projection for the market this time next year,
Number wise.
percentage wise? Like up,
Percentage
down?
wise, oh boy. I would unfortunately probably say that condos might see a few points. I'm going to bullishly say that freeholds, is it too wide a range to say 8 to 12%?
No, not at all.
So let's put it in the books, and we'll check this December 31st, 2025. Condos 3-4 points, freehold 8 to 12.
There you have it.
Okay.
Fingers crossed.
And Ian, do you see any areas that you think have a lot of upside potential, or like they're undiscovered, or areas where you're working with freehold buyers that are probably graduating from their first condo into their first house and want to find something that is still relatively affordable, totally acknowledging that affordable is not for everybody in the Toronto market? Those YouTube comments, I can hear them already.
It's true. It's true.
I'm like, I'm ready. So what are those gem neighborhoods that you feel would be worthy sharing for our viewership today?
I think in thinking about this question ahead of the call, I'm still always looking and following transit. And I think the opportunities for people in that first-time buyer segment looking at freehold are almost always sort of towards the ends of the transit lines. So I'm thinking, if for the love of God we ever see that LRT open, Eglinton West at Oakwood, Dufferin, Caledonia, and beyond is ripe for a lot of young families to go in there, the old Europeans to graduate to something else, and have those homes be updated, remodeled, have those young families bring the school districts up, thus further bringing the values up. I think Danforth at going the other way, Danforth at Maine, Victoria Park, Mimico and New Toronto could start to see a comeback. I think there was a couple of years there where it was doing well, and it's since been flatlining. And I feel like maybe Brown's Line is maybe, there's big properties out there and opportunity out there. And you've got the Long Branch GO station. It's not as far away from the city's core as people might think it is. So I'm going to sort of just put a pin in all of those. And if you're struggling to find Riverdale, if you're struggling to find the Annex, if you're struggling to find Trinity Bellwoods, these might be sort of next up-and-comers, the junction before it was the junction, if you will.
Brownsville, I kind of like that one.
Brown's Line? Yeah.
Browns Line, sorry.
Yeah.
Brownsville. Though whenever I'm there in that little area, I get so lost in terms of my like, I don't know what it is, but I have no sense of direction in that little area. Like, and then you all of a sudden you end up on like East Mall or something as you're trying to like get off that.
Oh yeah.
Range. Like,
yeah.
weird.
Dundas, Burnham Thorpe. I'm with you. I get a bit lost out there too.
I know. And I'm like, Dundas comes out all this way. And then all of a sudden like going like north. And I'm like, okay, I don't know where I am. So confused. So, but I actually like that. That's a nice, refreshing prediction. I like it.
Well, yeah, everywhere else is kind of like it might just be a little too late for you. And these are places where it might not be still.
Yeah, completely.
Great advice. Ian, we're going to wrap this up.
Sure.
With one last question for you. Give us your wild card 2025 out of the box prediction, or maybe not even prediction, just be like, keep your eye on this, or, this just might happen.
Well, I mentioned it before. Put it in your calendar, December 31st, 2025. Let's come back and look at this and see if I was right for any of these. Crazy wildcard prediction. Let's see if we can get the freehold absorption rate back to less than a month. Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, if we, 10% appreciation may do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Always an optimist. Always an optimist.
I feel like that's crazy.
Possible.
It's possible. Things would have to speed up quite a bit, and I think it could be done. That's why it's not that crazy, but it's going to take a lot to get there.
Oh my God, do we want to be that quick of a market again? Remember when we used to have it like that? And it was almost the exact opposite of the muck.
Jessica and I were telling the newer agents on the team a couple of weeks ago. We were like, oh my God, you had to book an appointment for 7 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock at night because you couldn't get an appointment time otherwise. And the whole weekend was full. Like, it was nuts. And then we looked at each other and went, and I miss it. And it's sort of true to a certain degree. You at least felt like you were getting somewhere.
Well,
Which was the opposite of muck.
Not with 35 offers on a property. And remember, you were deemed essential services and walking around in hazmat suits. So
Yep. Oh, I don't want COVID to come back. Don't get me wrong. No more pandemics, please. But
yeah, I think
I didn't mind running on the treadmill of real estate. It really did feel like you were definitely having more wins in a month than in the muck of 24. So,
and there you have it.
Yeah.
There you have it.
Yeah.
For sure. It was so good having you on the pod to talk about all things
Ian?
2025.
Thanks for having
Happy
me, guys.
holidays.
Happy holidays. Let's fucking go 2025.
Yes.
LFG.
LFG. Let's fucking do it.
Okay, folks, we have none other than Jerome Werniuk joining us today. He is a rock star, superstar, former baseball pitcher, ex-commercial real estate agent, broker, here to join us today to talk about market predictions in 2025. One of the great things about Jerome is he's had a lot of experience in the real estate sector on the commercial side. And so I think he brings a real interesting dynamic to his view of what's happening in the market today. And Jerome, at times also in his leisurely way, likes to be a bit of a contrarian. So I am super excited to see what Jerome's dialed in predictions are for 2025. Jerome, welcome to the Toronto Real Estate Podcast. So glad to have you here.
Thank you. A lot of my buddies are going to kill me for this, but big commercial real estate's basically just using larger, more fancier terms for the same things as residential agents use.
Well, there you go. Including calling showings tours. So our whole entire team has.
You can't go on a leisurely showing.
Yeah.
You go on a leisurely tour.
Crazy. No one ever said on our team the word tour until you started. Now everyone's going on tour. And I'm like, why?
Brian Yerkin.
That's very efficient, one less syllable. All right.
I like showings. Sounds good. Anyways,
Tours has a ring.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
Tours.
I don't mind it.
Let's jump in. 2025.
Okay. All right. Anyways, well, we're going to lead into it. Going into 2025, Jerome, let's talk about the types of conversations that you're having today with your clients and with people at many of the parties you go to about Toronto real estate. And have you noticed any type of a shift in sentiment or any type of change from what we were seeing earlier this year?
Yeah, I mean, most of the parties I go to these days, we're talking about kids for 90% of the chat, and then the last 10% is real estate. That's a typical mix. But the in those conversations, real estate often just comes up. Somebody's like, Jerome, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I'm in real estate. They're like, oh, what's your take on the market? It happens, 10 times a day. So whenever I'm in those conversations, and particularly,
that's usually when I say, "Oh, engineer," I just no one wants to ask
Don't
an
wanna talk
engineer,
about
and
it.
that kind of ends the conversation. I
I'm
like being incognito sometimes.
I love it. I'm still not jaded.
All right.
I love this.
Okay.
Quite often I'm at these parties with young parents, and a lot of people my age, early mid 30s. A lot of people are still renting, which is very different from a generation
Yes.
ago, right? And a lot of these people are people that are high income earners. They're making 2, 3, 4, 500 grand a year, and have chosen to rent and wait to buy kind of the second rung on the property ladder. Instead of buying a condo, they've rented a freehold home, so they have the space. That maybe they have a child, they're thinking about it, and then they want to skip right into like a freehold semi-detached home in the east or west end, let's say. And the sentiment has shifted in those conversations, particularly in sort of September. I would say September was the beginning of this. When somebody's like, I'm thinking of buying, the first thing I always ask them was like, why do you want to buy a home? And the next question is, why do you want to buy a home now? And the answer to that question has changed dramatically. September being that real critical turning point. And since that second rate cut that we had in September, that's when things started to shift. I had a lot more people start to tell me, not, it's for my life, but I believe it's a good time to buy now. And it's finally a good time to buy. You're not competing with 25 offers. Interest rates are clearly on the downswing. And I would say that that sentiment probably is derived from a lot of news reading and probably some pundit following on Instagram around real estate headlines being very grim for the last 2 years, and a lot of people being very negative about the real estate market and everything's going to come crashing down. And finally, we are seeing, first of all, interest rates coming down and headlines around that, wondering or pondering the question, is this the bottom for the real estate market? When you start to see those headlines shift from we're in a free fall to are we at the bottom? I think that is the sentiment that's shifted in a lot of those people that I'm talking to over a shrimp cocktail.
I like cocktails.
I love it. You guys are talking about your kids. You're having a shrimp cocktail. You might do a little spurring in about real estate, and then on you go. That's great. Okay. Well, it'll be interesting to see how things shake out with these conversations in the first quarter. So with that being said, what's your prediction look like for, let's separate it out. Let's talk predictions 2025 for freeholds, and let's talk prediction condos for 2025. You're always good at them.
Sure. I'll give my overarching macro and then I'll get into it. So the end of last year, there was this consensus. I know Ralph loves the word around the industry that as soon as interest rates start to drop, all the pent up demand of buyers that have been sitting on the sidelines would be unleashed on the market. And everybody knows the Toronto real estate market can flip overnight. It could, one day it's crickets. The next day there's a million people showing up and we're seeing bidding wars and wild price growth. There was that run up in the first few months of the year. But when we saw the first interest rate cut in June, which is a lot later than most people anticipated, that tsunami of demand, it didn't really show up. Like it was just kind of a nothing burger. And everyone's like, we're all bated breath waiting for, our news apps to update with the announcement. And we're like, all right, it's here. 25 basis point cut. Yeah, we're through this. We passed the kidney stone. Now we're on to greener pastures and the market's going to start ripping. And a lot of sellers had been saying, I'm going to hold off and not list my property until we see that first interest rate cut. And so sure enough, we had a lot of listings come out after the interest rate cut and just not a lot of buyers show up. And it was just kind of flat for Q3. And demand didn't really pick back up until October, November, when we saw really a substantial interest rate cut. Now down to 3.25%, where I believe like on a monthly mortgage payment, that's now like a 20% impact from the highest interest rates for variable rates. And so anyway, all of these things kind of came into place and nothing really happened until we picked up at the end of the year. So that leads me into what I think is going to happen in 2025, because you always got to look at how the year wrapped up. At this point, I believe the average monthly payment on the variable mortgage is down about 20%. Ralph, I think I got that from you and Jason's excellent podcast. And fixed rate mortgages are approaching 4% for like 3-4 year term. Mm-hmm. With blended average prices in Toronto being about 13% below their peak, factoring in condos and freehold, I expect to see a run up in prices right out of the gate. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a blended price growth well above the 10-year average. So probably in the sort of 7 to 8% blended between condos and freehold. Now focusing more specifically on freeholds, which is my bread and butter. It's where I spend most of my time. And where I spend a lot of my time is going to be the most exciting segment. The $1 to $1.5 million entry level homes, townhome semis, they're going to bear the brunt of this demand pressure that I expect. They typically capture the first time buyer segment. That's that, cocktail party, early 30s to late 30s, that's getting some down payment help from their parents and also has saved up a bunch of money when they've been renting. with the expansion of the uninsured mortgage rules, allowing buyers to purchase homes up to 1.5 million without having to put 20% down, it's going to add a very large swath of buyers to this market segment that wouldn't have been able to take a run at this category prior to the December 15th, yesterday's policy change. So this is going to put a ton more equity into the sellers' hands that are selling in this category as well, that are moving up from their 3-bedroom semi to a $2.5 million detached home. So this added pressure that's coming from the uninsured mortgage change, it will trickle up to the $2 to $3 million freehold category. So I'm just going to split that up. And my predictions that you're going to see an average price increase for semis of 10% next year and 9% for detached homes. Semis are just going to absolutely crush it. Going on to condos, they were just a problem child in 2024. They just dragged down the entire market. If you strip out freehold and condos, it was two different stories that were happening at the same time. And so when you look at blended averages, it doesn't really give you the whole story. You have to look at absorption rate for both, average sales, everything. You have to strip them all out. The I think it was condos. They hit a 7 months of inventory in September, which is a record high for City of Toronto proper. And all that said, as shitty as it was, excuse my French, sorry, I don't think 2025 is going to be as bleak. The uninsured mortgage policy change that I just talked about, it's expanding amortization to 30 years for most people that are looking to buy condos, not necessarily in that 1 to 1.5 category, but somebody that's like a $750,000 1 plus 10. All of a sudden, they're going to get access to stretch out their amortization period, get into more firepower. And with no end in sight for the nascent pre-construction market, I expect inventory levels to return to their sort of 10-year average of 2.5 months, primarily driven by end users.
I would love to know Jerome's predictions for, I don't know, areas in the city that you think could outperform or be like some hidden gems out there that people might not be as familiar with. Like where people, what areas can people discover?
I've got a couple takes on this, but I'm going to beat a dead horse here. I freaking love Leslieville. I love it so much. I live here. I bought here. Some people would argue, oh yeah, everybody knows about Leslieville. You talk to somebody that lived in the West End, they're like, oh yeah, I heard Leslieville is fine. Then you look at average prices for similar homes and it's just not reflected. Like there is such a premium put on other neighborhoods like Bellwoods, Little Italy, Roncy, and I do not think it's warranted. I have so many conversations with people that live in Midtown or West End that are shocked that Sarah, my wife, walks to her office on Bay Street in 30 minutes. I live closer to Bay Street, to Yonge Street, to Union than anybody that lives beside Trinity Bellwoods Park here in Leslieville. And I will tell you this, no matter how much people complain, traffic congestion is only going to get worse in this city. And walking, being able to ride a bike or take like a direct transit route is going to become more and more important long term. The next point around this is that I believe the largest and most impactful infrastructure project of my generation of millennials will be the Ontario line. Who knows when it'll get finished, but it will be once it is completed. The Eglinton Crosstown, it brings you to another subway. You fire down Yonge Street. It's still a massive commute from Laird and Eglinton. When that thing is open, you'll be able to get from Leslieville, call it Logan and Queen, to the downtown core in 10 minutes. You'll be able to get to a Toronto FC game in like 18 minutes. And when traffic gets really, really bad, when this thing finally opens, there is going to be no better place to commute from in the city that is a residential neighborhood, has good enough retail, and gets you downtown that fast. There's nothing better in the city than that.
Okay.
You know what else, like when you talk about Leslieville, that's so interesting, and we've been dealing with this firsthand, is there are like these streets in Leslieville that are the coveted streets, but there's really good value in some of the lesser known streets. And you'll see this tremendous dichotomy in price between the premium streets. And I think that there is a lot of value in the up and coming streets, the gentrifying streets. in Leslieville that people should be paying attention to. And, they could definitely reach out to you for some advice on that. But I definitely know some streets where there's some pretty good opportunities right now relative to Leslieville, let alone as a pocket in the overall market.
I wouldn't call it, undiscovered or anything. The thing is when there's this much demand now, imagine how much demand there's going to be if you're selling a home in Leslieville in 8 years when there is a subway. It's going to be so incredibly desirable that the level of demand we have now is going to look like nothing compared to that.
And what do you think of just a little further east, like your Greenwood, Coxwell kind of neighborhoods are in there?
Yeah, there's kind of this gap between Leslieville and the beaches that a lot of people forget about. And people say the beaches is amazing. You can walk down to Q Beach and go to the beach. It's amazing. It's its own little mini town in the city. They say Leslieville is amazing because the access to downtown, it's far enough west. Then there's this kind of forgotten pocket in between when you get Greenwood, all the streets, all those little pockets in there. They have access to Greenwood Park, which is fine. If you're up at Girard, you can hop on the streetcar and get on the Ontario line when it is built at Carlaw and Girard. So it's actually a much shorter commute than going from Roncy to downtown. And to Ralph's point about Leslieville, there is a ton of streets over there that have not really gentrified yet. And like 60, 70% of the homes are a little beat up. They're a little funky. There's no cachet in the names of these streets. But in 5 years, there absolutely will be where you can access the beaches. You can get to downtown fairly quickly. That'll fill in, and they'll just kind of lump in everything on the east end up into the beaches.
There's a lot of houses closer. The closer you get to Eastern, I think the more value you'll find. Yeah, you'll find in Leslieville for sure.
Yeah,
awesome. Well, this did not disappoint. Let me tell you, I still don't agree with you on the condo side, but everything else was just superlative and so great to have you here, Jerome. As always, we really appreciate your views on everything. And thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for sharing.
Happy holidays. Thank you so much.